everybody. All right, welcome. I'm going to call to order our Tuesday, February 11th discussion meeting. Please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Macro, roll call.
Mr. Adams.
Here.
Dr. Anderson.
Here.
Ms. Aaron.
Here.
Mr. Caligieri.
Here.
Ms. Chudowitz.
Here.
Dr. Richardson.
Here.
Mr. Sokolsky.
Here.
Mrs. Stepnick.
Here.
Mrs. Stropke.
Here.
And Student Representative Mr. Drew Thacker.
Here.
Thank you. The board met in executive session on February 11th, 2025 to discuss matters of litigation, safety, personnel, and real estate. Move on to citizens' comment.
If anybody in the audience would like to make a comment, we ask you to step up to the podium one at a time, state your name, your residency within Plum. You'll be provided 3 minutes to speak. This is a time where you'll be addressing the board directly and providing them with suggestions, comments, rather than a question and answer session with the board. Whenever you're finished speaking, we just ask that you step to the table here and write your name down on the clipboard so I spell it correctly in the minutes. I will put a 3-minute timer up on the monitor so you're able to keep track of your own time, but I will give you a 30-second warning as well.
Thank you very much. My name is Justin Ballou. I live in Regency Park. I have 2 children who currently attend PBSD. I come to you this evening to gather more information and also bring your attention to an issue. I'd like to know what the district's affiliation is with the Plum Mustang Foundation, and furthermore, if you are or not affiliated, I'd like to know why you endorse a foundation that has been repeatedly found to have its leaders bully adults all over social media in this community, but in the same breath ask children in this district not to be bullies. On Friday, my wife mentioned that a Facebook post in the community page had absolutely erupted again over a sledding issue at O Block Elementary. We live in a town that is right next to a state park. Why we are arguing over a sledding on a private property, I will never know. I did, however, chime into the post because I was fed up with seeing the same people who are leaders of this foundation being found to have repeatedly act like bullies and never be held accountable. What was offsetting about this wasn't so much that the people were arguing, but rather the lengths the people went to bully and bash these individuals who didn't share their same beliefs. These same people lead this foundation. They also went onto a podcast to further bully and bash this individual who was merely a concerned resident. This same podcast has had ties to the Plum High School on a regular basis. This type of behavior is disturbing and quite frankly should not be tolerated. If you're a leader of a foundation, you should be held to the same standards a school board member is. The amount of messages I got in the days following my discussion on the post was quite frankly insane. A lot of the community feels this way and actually encouraged me to come here tonight and say something. I do fully believe in the foundation and everything they stand for. I lost my brother to suicide in Plum this month in 2008, and it was majorly due to bullying. Like, it had a major impact. Accountability needs to be taken seriously when you're in these positions. These people need to actually think about that before they take them. Bullying starts at home. It's taught, just like hate. I also want to be sure to mention that there are some fantastic individuals involved with this foundation who actually are there to make Plum a better place. They also reached out to me as well and are as disturbed by these comments that they've seen on this page. I welcome your thoughts and understand this isn't a Q&A, but I did want to just basically put it out there that this is occurring and open you guys to having a discussion with me at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak at this time?
No, but I do want to say I'm sorry for the loss of your brother.
Thank you.
Just because, you know.
Okay. Academic achievement and activities, myself, lead board liaison, letter A, grants and donations. We have 2 awards listed there, one to Dr. Brian Stevens and one to Dana Lorenz at Pivic. Any questions or concerns with those? Do we have 5 to move them forward? Thank you. Letter B, Mr. Bronchi is requesting to attend the PMEA Western Region Orchestra Festival with 2 participating students at a cost of $800 to the district. Any questions or concerns? Do we have 5 to move it forward? Thank you. And then letter C, Dr. Thomas, our new assistant superintendent, requesting to attend the Western PA Assistant Superintendent's Forums Spring Retreat, March 13th and 14th in 7th Springs, at an approximate cost of $300 to the district. Any questions or concerns? Do we have 5 to move it forward? Dr. Thomas, have a blast. Bring back all good stories and things to us. All right, letter D, portrait of a graduate overview presentation.
So,
do you want to introduce?
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Anderson. It was about a year ago that we started to have conversations about, as a district, what do we expect of our students? What do we expect them to know? What do we expect them to be able to do upon graduation? And what are the skills that we would like to see from kindergarten through graduation? I actually expanded that from birth as a community through graduation. Dr. Boyers has led this initiative of Portrait of a Graduate. And honestly, his leadership, his stewardship in taking this conversation and bringing it to life, I believe we've had 80 community members, internal, external, sign up. Our students had a voice, our parents had a voice, our business leaders had a voice, and our teachers and our building administrators had a voice. So Dr. Boyers is going to share a little bit about this process and where we are with the portrait.
Thanks, Dr. Walsh. It's funny that you started with a year ago because I was reflecting on this process, and it was about a year ago. Dr. Walsh had been graciously provided the opportunity by this school board to go to an AASA conference, and he came back with this notion of portrait of a graduate and said, hey, I think this has a really lot to offer for our district. And I'm thinking to myself, a portrait of a graduate? Now, what in the world is that? And so for the coming months leading up until about May, when I presented initially to you about this initiative, we spent time researching and understanding, is this a good fit for Plum? Is it a good initiative to drive us forward? And then just reflecting through that process, came here in May, and you all graciously said, move forward. In August, we did a full kickoff with our leadership team to bring them up to speed. And then in September, the work really started with 83 members from internal and external within the community to bring what I'm going to bring forward to you this evening. So it's been quite a journey as we followed our process from start to finish, and I'm just appreciative of the opportunity to lead this process, and really the work's just beginning. So I bring to you tonight a visual, but really the next pieces are starting the finish line and kind of starting the race and putting it into implementation. So again, just real quickly, what is the portrait? The portrait is just an opportunity for a community to come together and say, what is our common vision and how are we going to get there? And so we talked about that. We talked about our competencies. We talked about what it is our students should know and be able to do in an effort to prepare them for their next future endeavors, whatever they may be. Next slide, Mrs. Macro. The portrait itself, or those competencies, they don't replace rigorous learning opportunities, but what they do is they take the rigorous learning and they marry it together with those competencies and those soft skills to provide deep and meaningful learning opportunities for students and to prepare students differently and more strategically as they enter into their future endeavors of the workforce and or next steps into post-secondary education. Our design team was comprised of 83 members. Representatives of students, teachers who are current educators and or retired, alumni, department leaders, administrators, school board members, business owners, communities of faith representation, childcare representation, because we had, as Dr. Walsh said, he's pushing us to think a little bit differently as students matriculate into our kindergarten classes. How can we better serve them? Our committee started out pretty mighty, and then it kind of dwindled a little bit over time. I was a little bit discouraged by that, but what I learned from the Battelle group is that's not atypical. They shared with me that some committee members will come out initially because they just want to know what it's all about. Some will come out because they're a little bit skeptical about what you're about to present, and you need to kind of acknowledge that. And then others, as they go through the process of the meetings, become satisfied. And you'll see some of those results as we go about. So initially I was like, oh goodness, like what are we doing wrong here? And Jess kept saying, it's not what you're doing wrong, it's just that some people are just dropping off for various commitments. But I wanted to acknowledge that opportunity there. We conducted 4 meetings, and we were highly focused during those 4 meetings for about 2-hour increments. Our first meeting, we reflected on how has the world changed, how has education changed, and really reflecting on the design team members, again, thinking about students in the room, but also vast folks who are sometimes in their 70s. You know, what did education look like for you? How has it changed? What's different? What were things that happened previously that don't happen any longer? Those conversations were fun, interesting, talking about previous smoke rooms in schools and things of that nature that, talking about the wheeled TV coming in and you knew it was going to be a video that day, and that brought a level of excitement to where our students are today and how are we preparing students for their next steps in the journey. From there, we talked about what are those essential skills and mindsets. And if you recall when I presented in May, these aren't things that were made up. These were research-based items that through reviewing job descriptions of millions and millions of job postings that emerged and put themselves forward as skills that employers wanted to see students and or young adults have and possess to be employed. We talked about how we take all of that and come up with a Plum shared vision. So again, thinking about the representation of the room, internal and external stakeholders, and coming together for a common vision. It wasn't easy. There was feedback coming from every avenue, and do we take this word and put it with this competency or shift this here? And all voices had an opportunity to be heard. And then lastly, in January, we came together one last time to say, throughout all of our hard work and all the data analysis, here is the visual that was proposed. Even during that meeting, there was still some debate. We had folks engaged in different activities about how do we shift this, or does this match or meet what we feel as a community. And this evening, I present to you the final rendering for your view. So on the left-hand side, or right, depending on where you're seated, the visual is the Mustang itself with the Plum script. And then around it, we have the 5 identified competencies that the design team came up with. This visual, we talked a lot about that logo. There was a lot of pride in the Plum script and a lot of pride in maintaining the Plum Mustang as it is. And so even the design phase of the logo had input and feedback throughout. And then the other addition is the same logo, but it has the competencies. And I know that's hard to see, so Mrs. Macro, if you could go to the next slide. Here's an opportunity, I just kind of zoomed in so you can see the competencies a little bit more crisp. And so these are the competencies: communication, integrity, critical thinking, adaptability, and empathy. And then underneath of it, we developed common language for our students as they matriculate through our system and our educators, so we can actually integrate these competencies into teaching and learning, but also the culture of our buildings. So now the work begins. We have the visual. We have the competencies, we've taken all of the feedback, and really we need to talk about what do we do next. And I think that's the big piece. We've heard a lot about portrait and portrait and portrait. And I said, Dr. Walsh, I might get fired because I think we might be curing cancer here with this portrait. And not to make light of it, there's a lot of good opportunity here. But where we're moving to next is incorporating the portrait of a graduate in our comprehensive plan. Our next line item this evening on the agenda will begin our comprehensive planning process, and ensuring that the portrait of a graduate isn't just an initiative that sits in isolation, but is immersed and embedded in all that we do. Talking about professional development for staff. How do we ensure that these competencies are living and breathing throughout teaching and learning, throughout assessment, throughout actions and interactions in our school buildings? And so we began that phase in January as a start point to start level set for our entire staff, and we'll keep building upon that. I have linked there the Mustang statements. During our design team phase work, we talked about age appropriateness. And Mrs. Macro, if you don't mind clicking on that. All we did here was we took the competencies and took the common language and just made it age appropriate for our students. And so right now, the work, we have a K-6 band that takes that language and just breaks it down, but keeps the minutia of what that's all about. And then we also have a 7-12 band that kind of expands upon that, obviously, again, thinking about students as they matriculate through our system. There's been some conversation internally to even break that down further. So again, that might be a next step as well. Throughout this process, we're going to be doing some branding. You'll notice that the presentation that I have in front of you no longer has the proverbial bullseye on it. I've started to utilize the Plum script. My badge has the Plum script on it now. I've been trying to do things to get reactions out of people differently to see if anyone notices, because we've heard that people don't love it so much. So I've been doing just kind of unique things to see what reaction response I get as I put different documents in front of people. So again, that'll be a part of it. The POG webpage, Mrs. Macker, if you don't mind clicking on that, please. What we've noticed from schools that have implemented the portrait of a graduate is they have a landing space for their portrait. So this is a very, very infancy stage of where we are, because obviously the board's going to have insight tonight, where there's a video there that kind of outlines our portrait, has some nice music to it, and then we just kind of put a baseline of information on here. This page will be a nice landing hub for our community and our internal stakeholders as well. And we'll continue to put forward information surrounding the portrait of a graduate here. But again, just want to have a baseline of a space to land for additional information. And then communicating. So we've talked about how we roll this out. So if the board so chooses to move forward this evening, and then during the action meeting in the 2 weeks to come, we'll start the work of communication through our digital backpack, informing families, continuing to update our staff and our faculty so they're positioned that when August rolls around, that we can hit the ground running with portrait. And then also just talking about how is it going to be embedded in our written curriculum, our school culture, our lesson plans, and then being future focused is what are those programmatic impacts? We heard the program of studies presentations last month. There were some questions around those programs of studies. And so again, how does this piece really fit as an integral component of our program of studies, and how it may look very different for students to support their needs and position them for their next steps in life. Throughout the time, we took in a lot of feedback, and as you can see here, the design team, towards the end, we asked them a lot of questions about how the process went, were voices heard, did they feel these items are practical and applicable, and you can see here that our results were favorable. But I think the part that resonated more with me is the qualitative piece on the next slide. So these are exact quotes that were given to us from the design team members, and I think they're pretty powerful. Talking about it reflects the current state of the district and may need changing in the future, so we understand that. We may have to evolve and be agile and pivot. Stakeholders were involved from a variety of aspects of the district, and it represents the needs, the collaborative effort that was put into this, the time that we spent. We worked hard during those design team meetings, and there are some folks on this board that can shake their head and attest to that. At least I hope they would. Again, that the sessions were long enough to engage and be heard. And then the last one I liked a lot was I love the fact that the entire community had the opportunity to participate and give their ideas and thoughts. I just thought that was a pretty unique way. We didn't put a cap on this. As we talked about with the Battelle team and our design, and thinking about our design team, the numbers, they said, be mindful of that. What do you want? Do you want 40? Do you want 50? Do you want 100? We communicated all through August. And whoever signed up, and they all came to the table. And so Dr. Walsh had challenged us to think about that and include everybody. And so everyone who signed up had an opportunity to seat at the table. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to lead. I'm thankful for the opportunity to present the output this evening. And I'm interested to answer any questions or hear any feedback you may have.
I just want to add one piece to this. First, I appreciate your leadership, Dr. Boyers, and bringing this idea to life. Our goal in moving forward with this is that this is not something that districts do that sits on a shelf or a virtual shelf. This needs to be a living, breathing document and live in every classroom K through 12. I mean, what I learned from going through this process is that in 1987, when I graduated from here, our kids are going into a different world that is more connected, more diverse, and employers are looking for soft skills along with the knowledge. And when I look at the competencies and envision what that could look like in a classroom, kids communicating with other kids, working in a group, critically thinking, the adaptability, being resilient, having empathy that when you're having debates and conversations, just being respectful. I think we could all maybe learn from that, right? And it also occurred to me that, you know, the assessments I took in the 80s was a lot of recall. And shame on us if we're still using that, because I can pick up my phone and recall any fact of information that's presented to me. I don't need to memorize it anymore. But I believe that these skills will give our students a competitive advantage when they graduate from Plum High School. I also believe that this is the start of some bigger conversations. You know, I petitioned PDE in giving us an extension on our comprehensive planning because we want this to be a living, breathing document in our comprehensive plan for the next 5 years of how we're moving this district forward. Governance, how we're moving this district forward. And I also feel that I'm proud of the fact that our community participated and really shared with us what we value as a learning community. And the goal will be to integrate this moving forward. Even integrity. We are having conversations about artificial intelligence and what that looks like in our classrooms and how kids are interacting with this new technology. It seems to me integrity might be a piece of that. Is this your work? So there's many opportunities here. I've said on some sidebar conversations that if these are the skills that our students need, then maybe our high school needs to better reflect what a 21st century high school should look like. And I've charged the high school administration with exploring that and looking at graduation credits. Can we give our students more flexibility of what their path looks like going through high school? 2 weeks ago, I met with the Chamber of Commerce. 140 businesses were in this room, and we asked them to partner with us. It seems to me we're going to have opportunities for job shadowing, some internships, which is probably better for our students trying to figure out the path they want to go on in life, because I think I shared that morning, you might want to go to Forbes Hospital and you want to be a nurse, but once you get there, you may realize it's not the field for me. It's better to discover that in high school than it is when you're already in a course in college. So I think as we're redefining what we want our kids to know and be able to do, we also need to redefine the environment in which they are learning. So the hope is through the comprehensive plan and through conversations with our program of studies that we will continue to move recommendations forward, in that this is the starting point for all of those conversations. I don't know if I missed anything, Dr. Boyes. I know I talk in circles at times, but I think I got my point across on this.
I don't think we have any. Go ahead.
I
I'm
was
sorry.
part of the design team for this, and I just thank you for your leadership. I know you were a little nervous leading the last session by yourself, but you did a great job. And I did appreciate all of the participants. It was really a community project because everyone was invited. Everybody's voices were heard. We did surveys and feedback, and you could just tell from one session to the next. When you gave your feedback, we started the next session with what that feedback was, how it was incorporated, from giving us refreshments when we came to just adjusting what the portrait looked like. And I think everybody that came from the beginning to the end was engaged till the end, and they want to still see like how this comes to fruition within our school. So I just wanted to say it was a lot of different voices that went into this. And I don't think, even though some members of administration was there from different buildings and whatnot, their voice wasn't louder than the student or the students that were there. Because there were students, there were 7th grade students there were students in high school there, so I think a lot of people were represented and a lot of their thoughts and feelings were put into this, and it reflects that.
Yeah, and I think the one that a lot of times when you hear you're coming to be a part of something, you feel almost like you're spoken to, not that you truly have a voice. And Battelle did a great job of, there was an app and we would answer questions and we would give our feedback and it would compile it all and then they would project it onto the board. And so it truly was meaningful to involve the community members because they really did have a voice, and you watch that and then you would collaborate at your table together and have to come to some decisions together. So it was good.
I'm interested in what our student rep feels about what we're saying.
I was hoping to talk, I just didn't know how to. So I will say, the previous, bullseye, sometimes, at least from my experiences, it gets made fun of a little. It feels a little outdated, and I definitely agree that we do need to move to a more 21st century world. In an age where AI is almost everything, it still feels like we're living in an age where we need to remember, hey, what's like the powerhouse of a cell, even though we can easily look that up. So I think reflecting on more, as like it says up there, critical thinking problems and charging administration from even 7th grade onwards would be an incredible way to prepare students better for a world in which we're always going to have our cell phones to look up anything we need to. And honestly, it just kind of looks better, in my opinion. But
What would you do without your cell phone?
Yeah, and I'd say to just allow this the opportunity to evolve. I mean, you mentioned 1987 is not 2025, but 25 is not what 2035 is going to look like either. So, yeah, just give it the chance to be flexible too. So.
And these are the questions that you get asked when you're doing a job interview, not necessarily like, tell me exactly how you would fix this if you're going in for a mechanical job. It's how do you adapt? How do you communicate? How do you get along with others? So I think this is something good for our students to be striving towards and our teachers to be striving to teach them.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Boyers.
Thank you.
We need 5, Dr. Borders. You want to move this forward, correct?
Well, the design team actually wants to see the visual, and I told them I would not hit send until this group had approval. So I sent them the thank you letter, but they're waiting on the visual, so.
Any concerns with the design? Do we have 5 to move the design forward? That's all we really have to move forward for tonight, right? Okay. All right. So comprehensive plan, steering committee, induction plan, and professional development.
I'll turn that over to Dr. Boyers.
That's what I was saying. Gonna say, don't sit back down.
I think I already gave my lead into that.
So in front of you are 3 different steering committees that the board must approve by PDE's standards. PDE does dictate to us the personnel who need to be on that group, not necessarily the quantity. And so if you click on any of these items, so the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee is the entirety of the group of folks who have committed to date. And so that's why it's in front of the board. It is representative of parents, internal stakeholders, students, business leaders, and folks of that nature. So it is comprehensive in nature. You can see some of the PDE language there about as they're recommended by, who they're approved by. The teachers union had to recommend their own teachers, the educational specialists, so on and so forth. So we didn't really have a lot of say as administration to say who was on that committee. The induction plan committee, similar in nature, those folks are focusing on induction of our new teachers, as ensuring that we're supporting them as we collaborate with the AIU. That plan is functioning and supporting teachers as they matriculate towards their level 2 and tenure. And then lastly is the professional development committee, which is the exact same steering committee, just minus the students. Obviously, they're not necessarily included by PDE standards in that conversation, but we're going to do a comprehensive group and include all stakeholders that come to the meetings throughout. So this is in front of the board this evening as a discussion item for eventual action to submit to PDE that we've met those requirements.
Any questions or concerns? Do we have 5 to move them forward? All right, wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
So that's all for academic achievement and activities. There is nothing under community engagement for this evening. We'll move on to finance. Mr. Stropke, lead board liaison.
Letter A is the monthly budget report. Anybody have any questions regarding the budget for January, I guess? It is February. Time keeps flying by. Do we have 5 to move that one forward?
The only thing I would add is I really appreciate the way that this is done and clickable into them and the bullets underneath each of them. I don't think I've ever said that before, but
Try to continue to improve it each
yeah,
time.
I was
so.
going to say, it keeps evolving, and I like, for those of us who aren't financial, gurus, I like the way that it is. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Item B is the audit presentation and financial reports, and I'll let Mr. Manzer introduce our presenter.
Sure. So we have Amy Lewis from Marduzel to provide a chance to speak in front of the board in an independent nature.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to be here again to present the results of the audit. This will be the audit for the year ending June 30, 2024. So any numbers I go over, I'm doing very high level because, as you mentioned, we're already in February, somehow, not sure how, and you're already well in your way into the next school year. You can go to the next slide. So audit deliverables, similar to what we've always delivered as part of the audit package in past years. You do receive a single audit, which includes your financial statements, as well as additional schedules and reports that are required by the single audit that have to get packaged together. We issue 3 different audit reports within that package. The first one is on the financial statements. Then there's one that's in accordance with government auditing standards. And then there's one that's specific to the federal program that we audit that's required by the uniform guidance. And I'll kind of touch on that a little bit in the next slide. There is a communication to those charged with governance letter, which really covers all the things that I'm talking about tonight, but just in a written format. The data collection form is an element of the single audit. It takes a lot of those back schedules that are included in your financial statements related to the single audit, puts it into a format that the federal government requires for you to submit onto their clearinghouse website. And that's part of the submission package. That's part of your requirements to submit that information so that the federal government and any entities such as the PDE have the ability to access that information to check to make sure that you're in compliance. Finally, if we had management letter comments, recommendations, things that we wanted to call to your attention as part of the audit, we would issue that in the form of a management letter where we would spell out to you what our comments are and then any recommendations that we had. The good news is that there are no comments that we need to present to you as part of the audit, which says that all of the tests that we performed, we were able to conduct satisfactorily. All the questions we answered were answered appropriately, and we don't have any concerns about any internal control weaknesses that we want to call to your attention for further consideration. So good news there. As far as the required audit communications, I do always reiterate that our responsibilities under all those auditing standards that I talked about are really, to perform procedures in order to provide a basis to render our opinion. We do not look at 100% of everything that flows through the school district. Certainly we, really make sure we understand what's going on at the district, what new information has happened, if you issued debt, if you had any changes in real estate, if you had any new subsidies that came through, as far as hirings, anything that might go on that might impact your financial statements, and really kind of understand, how that works. We get an understanding of policies and procedures that you have in place, if there we're conducting, writing, getting a check out the door or processing payroll or things like that. We get an understanding of that to really be the underlying measure of, where do we want to spend our attention for your financial statements? What do we think is most significant about your operations and your financials? And then making sure we, design our tests to cover all of those significant areas. The remainder of the information, obviously, we look at, but certainly, more of a reasonableness review. So we can't give you absolute assurance as part of the opinion. No audit would do that. But the procedures we do provide you with the highest level of assurance that you can get. We will be issuing an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of opinion that you can get in the audit. And so, good news there. Reminder that the financial statements are yours. They are owned by the district. So, ultimately that's why we, have these opportunities for management to review the financial statements. We come here before you so that you all can make sure you are comfortable with what's in the information. And then we do assist in drafting those reports, as part of the audit process. But again, ultimately they are your reports. No new accounting standards that were required to be adopted during the year had any significant impact to your financial statements, which is good news, meaning the information is comparable to what you had in past years. There's nothing new to point out as anything unusual or different about your financial statements. You had no other accounting policy changes that you adopted otherwise, besides outside standards coming in and telling you to change. And we had no difficulties in performing the audit. The financial statement disclosures are neutral, consistent, and clear, and what that means is, we do look through your footnotes. We make sure you are presenting things the way you're supposed to, according to the accounting standards. We feel the information that is conveyed is accurate and reflects the requirements of what you are supposed to be disclosing. There were no material audit adjustments posted, so that's also good news to you all. That says that the financial information that you're getting throughout the year and you're using to make your decisions on is accurate information. And so when we come in for the audit, we don't have to adjust anything. So that's a testament to the business office and making sure that their information is accurate throughout the year. No findings reported for the single audit, so we do look at specifically the child nutrition program was the program we audited this year, and so as part of that there's some compliance that we have to test, and there was nothing where we had any findings related to how that program was operated during the year. And then no disagreements with management or anything of that nature to tell you about. So as far as financial highlights, again, just, real high level, I just included a couple of the highlights just to kind of remind you of what happened in fiscal year 24. Nothing really out of the ordinary in your financial statements. There was, some capital projects you had, no new debt issued. Like I said, we audited the child nutrition cluster as the major program. Really, pretty basic, normal financials as far as what's flowing through those financial statements. The next slide is the financial summary. I just put this on. Obviously, the financial statements go into 80 pages or whatever till you include all the footnotes and everything, so there's a lot more detail behind these numbers, but at a very high level, your three funds, your general fund, your capital projects fund, and your cafeteria fund are presented here. Just some big things to point out is, there was a transfer between the general fund and the capital projects fund, so you'll see that in the second to last line, and then the bottom line shows you your total change in fund balance for each of the funds, all that were in a positive movement in 2024. The next two slides, I just pair up real high-level revenues and expenditures between actual and budget, and really just when you look at the revenues, the big story there is just some subsidies that you had received during the year that weren't part of the original budget, security, mental health grants, some other, regular PDE subsidies that just were higher than budgeted, but everything else was really, pretty consistent. And then expenditure-wise, there were some savings to the budget, really because of some vacancies in personnel and just some conservative budgeting that you had taken in 24. So nothing there that, really highlights any concern. I always present the numbers for PSERS just because if you're going to look at a big number on your balance sheet, this would be the number that will probably jump out at you. Again, you as the district are required to show your piece of the PSERS liability. You are not required to fund this liability other than by your annual payments that the PSERS sets for your contribution. So you take your percentage, you put that on, and then there's a whole host of footnotes that you have to include talking about that. So this slide just, visualizes what those numbers are. Over time, the expectation is that with the changes to the plan, that maybe that'll help to make this number smaller for the state of Pennsylvania. Obviously, that's going to take many years until all those plan provision changes really have an impact to this number because it is so big to start with. But again, you are making all the payments that you're supposed to be making every year, so you are doing what you need to do, and then you just have to report this number as part of the required accounting standards. As far as future considerations, not much here. A couple of new accounting standards that are coming out in the next couple of years. Nothing that's overly significant, and certainly, we'll work with Brian to make sure, that there's good understanding of what these requirements are. Really might change a little bit about what's in your financial statements, but nothing that's going to impact operationally what you do. So, throughout the year, whatever reports you're getting will continue to be the same. These will be more things that are kind of tied to the financial statement disclosures and information that's in the audited package, not necessarily, internal things that you would have to be too concerned about tracking or reporting. So all in all, a good audit, really no concerns to present at this point in time. You have a good team working behind the scenes to make sure, your resources they're being good stewards of your resources and keeping track of the information, which, is really what you would hope to be hearing about. Any questions that you have for me?
I have a random one. It feels like we got an A+. I just wonder, year over year with other districts when you do this, and just to sing our business office praises, like how often are you finding things where that isn't the case with other districts?
There are a lot of cases where we are finding, because honestly, I think as is the case for every district, your budgets are only so large. Mm-hmm. And so you are spending and committing a lot of your funds on making sure the education of the students can, be first and foremost. Yeah. Totally acceptable. Then the business offices it's a big company that they're running, and a lot of times the people, there's not as many people in the business office as you would think with as much money as is being spent in a district. And so we find that there are issues where, people are just, having trouble keeping up with the standards. Or if you think about it, probably there's 450 different ways that you have to dissect the financial information, because you have to answer to the PD for this, and you have to answer to the board for this, and you have to answer to this institution for this, and you're dissecting that information and making sure that you're meeting all those requirements. And so there's a lot of times where it's just really hard to keep on top of that, and making sure that everybody's able to do their function and still get the payroll paid and the check out the door. There's a lot of demands on time, and so we're finding where that becomes more of an issue as people just don't have
not that they're doing something horrible or mischievous, but just their bookkeeping and inability to keep it all.
Exactly. I mean, right. It's more just about making sure that there's enough people involved in the process to help with checks and balances, and just to make sure that everything, you remember to get everything out that needs to get out, or all the approvals are happening appropriately. So it's not a malicious thing. It's just more a resource allocation.
Yep, that's a great way to say that.
I would just add, Dr. Anderson, that, it was Mr. Manzer and his leadership in the business office of reconfiguring our business office and realigning, I think has yielded the results that we're seeing today.
Yes.
So, I think this board has heard me say on numerous times, looking at our overall budget compared to other similar districts, we do a lot with the personnel we have here, and you get a lot of bang for your buck in the Plum Borough School District. Mm-hmm. And our business office reflects that also. So,
Yep, I would agree with that.
Thank you for the audit, and Mr. Manzer, thank you for the work that you and your team do.
Yeah, I want to personally thank my team. They do a lot of work for this audit and the reporting, and they do a great job in supporting and working with Amy's team as well at Marduzel. They're very professional, top-notch, and we always like to have them in and get them out the door, but they're great to work with, so we appreciate it every year.
Thank you. So, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you. Have a nice evening.
You too.
We don't have to move anything forward versus.
Do we have to vote on it? Do we have to vote on the audit?
Does it need approved? Mm-mm.
The financial statements will move forward. The
financial report.
Yeah, we need the financial. Yep.
Yep.
So 5 to move the financials forward.
Yep.
Okay.
And then letter C is the Holiday Park Plan Con Part J, which Mr. Manger will give us some details on what that.
Sure. I dare you to try to read through all this and understand all the calculations. Very complicated forms. This is part of the old PlanCon process. This is for Holiday Park. So years ago, there was a preliminary reimbursement rate that was approved for the school district. This was something that was brought up in our debt service review by PFM, is that we had temporary rates approved, and we should have filed the final paperwork to have permanent rates approved. So we went through a little bit of a research process, and early in 2024, I believe, is when we filed this with PDE, and then we finally received the approval. All of this does is it converts those temporary rates to permanent rates, and they're very marginal differences. So the process from here is it's required, they wanted us to get this board approved just for the records and the minutes, and we will receive a reconciliation payment for back reimbursements. And then also, we've already adjusted our schedules moving forward for future reimbursements. We do not know what that result will be. They will automatically calculate that and provide that to us. I tried to find an information out or try to calculate it myself, and it wasn't available. So I don't anticipate it to be significant, but these will be approved for the records, and then I can update the board as soon as we know what those reconciliation payments are.
So we're going to do a refund. The question is, we just don't know how much at this point.
Yep.
Yep. So do we have 5 to move that forward? Okay.
All right, and that's all for finance this evening. You have nothing for Forbes, intergovernmental, or legislative, so on to operations. Mr. Adams, lead board liaison.
All right, start with the health and safety plan. Anything,
There's
nothing.
We're required every 6 months to approve the health and safety plan. This was something that was approved during COVID. There has not been any changes to our status or our plan besides changing the date, but we're required every 6 months to put this on the board agenda and move it forward.
All right, any questions on that? 5?
Okay.
All right, moving on to B, the E-rate bids. I believe Dr. Boyers, you and I talked about that, so I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, so this is a letter of intent. Essentially what E-rate is it's offsetting costs for internet, high-speed internet, and other functional technology services to support our network. This intent indicates that there are 3 conditions that must be met to move forward. Is first, the board has to approve a 25-26 financial budget. Second, the board motion tonight, and then third, the E-rate money needs to be dispersed. So E-rate was offsets cost at 50%. So we have some items in our technology, under our technology umbrella that are going to be end of life. This money will be utilized, and I'll have Mr. Elicker provide some additional insight at another time on that. But this is just simply saying that if we meet those 3 criteria, that we would engage with the E-rate process and we'd have that 50% reimbursement.
Significant reimbursement.
Yeah,
If,
5 to move it forward. Okay.
all right, C is the tennis court bids. I'm not sure, maybe Mr. Mansard takes that one.
Sure. If you've experienced our tennis courts lately or observed them, as they do need some work, we have Ms. Schaefer here to give a little overview of the project. If you want to speak to it a little bit.
We went out to.
Would you mind coming up to the mic?
Oh.
So anybody online can hear you.
Okay.
While you're walking up, I would say that a few years ago, we put a Band-Aid on the tennis courts. I've seen people drop a tennis ball and hit a dead spot, and it doesn't really bounce back up. We believe that it's a safety concern, and I really appreciate Ms. Schaefer in looking at the bid, going through the bid process and coming up with something that I believe is of significant savings in regards to upgrading our tennis courts.
Right, we went out to 3 companies asking them for bids on doing a total redo of the court. So what they would do is go down 4 inches, bring all that back up, resurface, take down the old fencing around it, put in new, And the three that we brought in, Keystone Sports was the least expensive. And in all of this, they will also provide us with windscreens that will have the new Plum script on it. So we're already on our way to the new Portrait of a Graduate. So they will be able to start that with your approval as soon as the weather starts to break and it warms up a bit.
The only challenge is tennis season is around the corner.
Right.
We've already communicated with the athletic department that our students, like other districts around us, will utilize Boys Park until this is finalized. But this is a long-term solution to our tennis courts. And if I'm not mistaken, some of the lines will have pickleball also on there that the community would also be able to utilize. So if you're a pure tennis player, like Mr. Manzer, he's probably frowning about that, but I think it just gives us more use out of our facilities for phys ed and for community use.
And the boys' courts just got redone, so they're very nice.
That's what I understand, yes.
We probably would have to move, and regardless, they would have to move because of the condition.
The condition.
Correct.
Yeah, way, they
Yeah.
would have to move. Yeah.
This funding will come out of our capital project fund.
Okay.
Okay.
Dr. Walsh, if I may ask a question. First, I'm very excited that we're getting away from the Plum script and that ridiculous bullseye. And I'm excited to know that we'll be on the new tennis courts. I really thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I could hear it all. I apologize. I'm up here for Special Olympics. The exchange students wanted to come, so I'm trying to sit in a quiet place. Could you repeat for me when we would do these tennis courts?
End of March, mid-April, once the weather breaks and the ground is a little bit warmer.
Oh,
And for the concrete, we can't put concrete down until the temperature is an ambient of like 45 degrees.
no, I can appreciate that. I can also speak from experience. We just redid 4 tennis courts at Hidden Valley, and the weather quote unquote broke, and it's still cracked. And I have concerns that our tennis season's coming up for our kids.
Yeah, that's,
So anytime it gets wet, it's going to be a curing process. This isn't going to be a 30-day thing.
yeah, Michelle, they just shared, you might not have,
Like the weather, the timing of that with the weather and uncertainty, this is better to do this after the tennis season and in the summer when it's drier.
Michelle, we already said the courts are unusable for our players for this year anyway for safety concerns. So no matter what, the team's gonna have to utilize Boyce Park's courts for that reason. So I hear you on the other piece. I just want you to know we've already solidified for the team.
To do this in March. I'm telling you all, it's a very bad decision. I just watched it go on at Hidden Valley. Tens of thousands of dollars later, they're having to fix it again. I would prefer this wait.
Yeah, I hear you. And what we're saying is that we're going to start the work. It's going to take some time to clear that space, drop those fences. And, we start that work as soon as it's, feasible to do so. And I trust, Ms. Schaefer, her judgment on that date. But it's going to take some time, I would say several weeks to prepare that space before they pour anything. And by that time, we would be into April, if not May, I would imagine. Is that correct?
Right, and they're not gonna put the concrete down until they're absolutely sure that it's going to be decent weather.
Yeah.
And my question to you would be the parking and how much this is gonna disrupt our student parking while the construction's being done.
It won't.
Okay. Their
No,
machines won't be
They
in
will
the
have a
way.
very specific area that they can park, and the lay-down area will be very small, so there's not gonna be any.
So I just know that's utilized in spring seasons and spring sports too. So
Right.
students will still, and families will still be able to park.
Yeah, we had talked about that.
tennis courts, I would imagine.
I'm sorry?
These are not your first tennis courts.
No, no.
Yeah. And I think the safety factor is the reason why we're moving it to the timeline that we are.
Right.
The goal is let's try and get this up and running so that, our community and our students can utilize it as soon as possible. So.
Awesome.
All right. Any more commentary? All right, we have 5 for that. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the Highland Electric School Bus contract. We have a statement.
I'll start that, yeah. So, while Ms. Schaefer's here, I'd like to first share with the board that, as you're aware, we've been exploring the electric school buses and having conversations on and off, and have asked for an extension, going into February, so that we could do our due diligence and take our time and go through our process. I'd like to first thank Mr. Mander, who oversees, not only is he our Chief Financial Officer, but he oversees operations. And that includes Mr. Hartman, who put a lot of time and effort into writing grants, Mr. Coles in our Transportation Department, and exploring electric buses and traveling as far as when he was on vacation, stopping in Atlanta at their bus depot. And Ms. Schaefer, for all the work that goes into what would it take to pull power to our bus garage. So this has been a very time-intensive process, but we have to trust the process, and that's why we asked for the extension. So just to review, we started with a needs assessment with some fact-finding in regards to the money that was out there at the federal level in regards to electric school buses. We did an internal review and found out that we have 25 buses that would fit the model that may be advantageous for the district. On paper, it looks like a great opportunity financially of using alternative revenue in order to offset some of our expenses in our overall budget. Then we moved on to an external review. And as some of you know, went on the grand tour from Baltimore to Kenneth Square, had conversations with Erie School District, and even last week, Mr. Manzer and myself drove out to Washington County and talked to a transportation company that services 3 school districts and has 10 school buses that are electric. What we found is sometimes what's on paper, sometimes it looks too good to be true, and what we discovered was some concerns as we start talking to bus garages, mechanics, drivers, and some of those concerns were, one, the financial concern of it being a savings to this district. With the change in leadership with the federal government, there's a change in direction in some of those IRS rebates. We don't believe they will be there. We believe there's a shift in direction. And the other concern was running power to our bus garage. We got estimates of $2.2 million in order to run power. We also have been working with our state and federal level with our politicians in order to see if we could bridge that gap. We're also concerned about long-term costs with batteries, maintenance, etc. What I found in talking to other bus companies is that some of these companies had a dedicated person for the electric fleet. And when I say electric fleet, I'm talking between 10 and 25 buses was an additional person just to manage the charging and everything that's associated with that. Other concerns were, at our meeting on last week, 30% of their fleet was in the shop. I've said on several occasions, sometimes the cutting edge is the bleeding edge. We believe the technology is still new. And what I've found in talking to other external partners is that they had diesel buses backing up their electric buses, which doesn't make sense because part of the rebate was to sell off our older buses. We also learned, and when you really get into the nitty-gritty when you talk externally, is that something as simple as a 2-hour delay, if you think about it, we have a 2-hour delay and then it pushes right into the midday kindergarten runs. That might have been problematic for our electric buses that were targeted to have some of those runs. It might not have been enough time between morning and afternoon to fully recharge. Based on all these factors, we are recommending not to move forward with the electric buses at this time. I think Mr. Manzer, I'll give him an opportunity to speak from the financial piece, but we want to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars when we're investing, and this just seemed at this point in time to be a risk. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Manzer.
Yeah, that was gonna be my main point, is that typically even in our investments, we operate at near zero risk, and the transaction was either gonna require a large upfront investment or a fairly significant investment on a yearly basis in regards to a lease for these buses. And at this time, the entire transaction seemed like there was too much risk involved in how it would play out. And I think the prudent thing to do would to be continuing operating on our current model instead of taking this risk to invest in this new technology.
So our next steps, because we're not moving something forward to the board, would be we had a clause in our contract to move forward, or I should say we will not move forward with that contract, and we'll start the communication if the board is in support of that recommendation.
Questions, concerns,
Any questions?
thoughts?
All right, we have 5 to,
Yeah, I think more than anything, I just want to say I appreciate the due diligence. I appreciate the work that you guys put into it. I know it was lots and lots and lots of hours, and I know you already said that, but your staff did a lot. And I think, well, several $1 million is a lot, and so it was great to go down that road, but I appreciate the due diligence and that we didn't make a quick decision. I know some of the community was a little unnerved by us not making a quick decision, but I think it's a testament to just the work that you guys do and the processes that you use to make sure that we are being thorough.
We want to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars.
Yep.
And as Mr. Manzer talked about the risk, and why did we initially pursue this? Because we thought it would have been a financial benefit to our community and our local taxpayers. It doesn't mean that we're going to stop looking at other alternative sources of revenue.
Right.
You know, we may come forward with looking at other options down the road, but at the heart of it is keeping our local community in mind in regards to how can we offset some of the costs moving forward and being fiscally responsible. So that's the drive behind this, is trying to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars.
yeah, and I think conducting the due diligence that you did just galvanizes the process that much more as you go forward and look for other cost-saving measures or revenue-generating measures. You know, it's going to be that much stronger of a process when you explore those, so.
Yep.
All right. So, just 5 to put the, do we need to move that? or-
We're not moving forward,
I think we should say 5 to move forward with not.
To not
doing
move
it.
forward.
Okay,
Just want to
Like,
clarify.
we're actively canceling the contract.
Yeah.
Yes.
all right, so. All right.
That'll be an action item too? Okay.
Before the action meeting.
Yes, we're gonna be doing
Okay.
the process.
Right, that's what I mean, yeah, okay.
All right, and then my last item is the first all transportation agreement. Mr. Mayor.
So this is we've tried various companies in the past when we're not able to fulfill a transportation run ourselves, having another option or another company. This was recommended through Mr. Coles that they may be able to provide transportation for a hard-to-fill route that we may have.
All right, any discussion?
I just had a quick question. Mr. Manzer, is this similar to the consortium that we were doing with the other school districts if we couldn't find a run?
Yeah, the consortium that we had previously worked with was trying to coordinate between districts and share. This would be purely just a third-party company that would be able to provide one individual student route.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we have 5. Thank you.
All right, moving on to personnel. Mr. Caligiuri, lead board liaison, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here, thank you. Sorry I couldn't be there in person.
That's okay.
So the first one is, we have a couple of agreements. The first one's very standard. It's an agreement with Quest Diagnostics for them to do pre-employment drug testing. I don't know if admin has anything to add to it, or if there are any questions.
Just one general comment about 12A is that UPMC purchased MedExpress, and when they did that, they dropped all of their substance abuse testing protocols, so we had to go out and find a different vendor. Quest came back as one of 3 that we looked at, the cheapest and the most accessible for 2 locations, one in New Ken, one in Monroeville, for employees to have pre-employment screenings.
Any questions?
I think you're good.
Do we have 5?
You do.
All right. The other one is a small agreement with Vector Solutions for safety and compliance. Dr. Thomas, do you want to add to this one as well? Just give a little background. I'm not sure which of the three of the administrators want to give a little background considering the safety and compliance costs.
Yeah, so Utica National Insurance Corp is our basically liability partner for any coverage for employees, et cetera. This came in a recommendation for all of our compliance trainings. They provide an online hub that we can actually assign employees for specific trainings related to compliance, such as Pennsylvania Act 126, which is mandated reporter training. And Vector Solutions does offer a combined process where this is about a $9,200 subscription. Utica is going to basically pay that. What we have to do is pay the enrollment fee of $1,000 per year and a one-time $1,000 sync-up fee for Mr. Laletta and his team to make sure that all of our accounts are single sign-on. So this would be an ongoing annual agreement, but we would renew it every year. It really wound up being $1,000 per year with almost a $10,000 benefit.
And they'll update and provide different types of compliance
Correct.
training. And they'll update it to PA standards.
Pennsylvania standards, and this is specifically HR training. It's very specific to that.
Perfect.
Any questions? Do we have 5?
You do.
Great, thank you.
Yep, thank you, sir. All right, policy, Ms. Arendt, lead board liaison.
All right, first we have the first reading of 209.3, first aid standing orders, which is a detailed policy regarding the administration of first aid in the district. Do we have any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, do we have 5?
Is there any significant changes? No.
Just a PSBA update, and this is actually under health immunizations and screening, which is policy 209. 209.3 is just a subset of that, how we are supposed to process standing orders.
Thank you.
Now, I guess the only question I have, which I'm sure you guys will do, is it looks like Dr. Crossi signs on that, just that he knows.
I think it's just an example.
An example,
so,
okay,
yeah,
got
yeah.
it, okay.
Okay,
Perfect, sorry.
5 on that one?
Well, we're not yet, because that's a first reading.
Yeah.
We'll do
Okay.
it the next time, but you're right on the rest of
Okay.
them. Go ahead.
Then we have, under letter B, we have the second reading of policies 1 through 4 that were presented at the previous discussion meeting. Do we have any questions on those? Okay. We move those forward.
Yep, do we have 5? The only question I have on the new policy 815.4, just the background, because that obviously is all us. There's nothing green on there. It looks like we've created a subset of a policy. I don't know who can speak.
Yeah, I can speak to that. This came out of a few different things. We have a lot of employee-owned equipment coming on campus. And when working with the IT team, we had to expand the scope of personal technology. An original version of this 815.4 literally said things like iPods and digital cameras, which are at this point obsolete. So when you look at the personal technology device, we're talking about wearable technology such as Apple Watches, fitness trackers, et cetera, and those all do hit the network. And so when if they potentially hit our network, it has a liability factor for that, and this does cover us in that realm. Plus, if we do have employees on campus using that technology, it gives us some ability to have jurisdiction over when they can and when they can't use that technology.
Okay. Okay, we already passed and said 5 to them, I just was asking the question. So we have nothing for projects and planning, student services, so upcoming public meeting, we'll have the board action meeting on Tuesday, February 25th at 7 PM in the library. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
All those in favor? All those opposed?